Hello, everyone. So, this is my monthly live stream looking at the core evolutionary themes of February. Once again, we're not going to be using a chart because I just have not yet figured out how to do that streaming thing, and I'm committed to get that going. So, I'm going to introduce this by saying February really has two ecosystems in it. For the first part of the month, we have a very strong culmination happening within Capricorn. Then we have a lot of energy moving into Aquarius, joining Pluto. So this will be the first thing that I'll speak about, this very significant transition. Mercury, Venus, Mars, all moving from Capricorn to Aquarius, but joining Pluto in Aquarius. Then we have Venus and Mars joining each other. In fact, let me grab my journal. They're actually going to be conjunct. So in the whole process of Pluto and Mars coming to join together, we also have a very, very important culmination and dance happening with Venus and Mars. So really everything Mars is up this month. There's just so much activity. So we're really going to be tuning into what that's all about. And we have the significant, this is sort of one of the main transits of the year, the Chiron North Node conjunction. I'll address that briefly, but I'm actually going to be giving a whole free class on the Chiron North Node conjunction. And that's you have to register for that class. So I'll be doing that in a couple weeks. That's happening in the middle of the month. So it's a very engaged, in fact, that Chiron North Node is ruled by Mars. I mean, it's a very Mars active month, but just in very diverse kinds of ways. So it's helpful to start with that. I'm going to give us a perspective on what does it mean right now for Mars to be where it is. I actually I recognize a lot of potency in this Mars signature. So Mars was squaring the nodal axis in Aries and Libra this past month in January. And whenever a planet squares the nodal axis, you can actually think of it as manifesting in two very distinct phases. The approach to the square, and this was, like the first half of January, is the buildup of the tension. That square, something wants to be opened up and resolved and integrated. And it points to an area that might be sort of polarized, that wants to bring more wisdom and clarity and insight into our life. So the buildup towards that square is a lot of tension building. When we pass the point of the square, it's a different phase. This is actually the playing out, the manifesting, and the expression of that energy. As it's resolved, as that tension is resolved, it brings us into a greater presence and connection to its dynamic in our actual life. So the difference between these two phases would be like preparing to go on a trip, all the stress and the energy of packing and getting yourselves ready, and then actually walking out of the door. You're carrying the bags now. You're actually committed. You're actually in this new phase where you're going on the journey. That's how we can think of that transition before the square and after the square. Mars in Capricorn, after it's square to the nodes right now, but moving to join Pluto, is, to say it simply, a highly stressed energetic. It's highly stressed. I mean, Mars in general tends to be high stress. That's its archetype. It's instigating. It can be visceral. We're feeling something strong. We want to respond to it or react to it. But in this particular phase with the nodal axis, we're integrating a lot of psychic content. And it's really about what are the essential choices that I'm making right now? How am I integrating that in the status quo of my relationships, of my life? Is this livable? Is this workable? The tension with this Mars and Capricorn signature. And I wrote something down here that I can express. There can be a pressure to act, to make choices, to be moving forward while carrying a boulder on your shoulders. It's like the responsibility of a parent, or the responsibility of someone who has a job that has to show up on time. The responsibilities of relationship, all the responsibilities that come with this human experience. Mars and Capricorn right now, it can feel as if there's a lot to do. There's a lot to get done. And that there's a great amount of stress and pressure that we're carrying that requires our leadership and our connection. But the challenge within that is living and moving from a place of stressfulness. And that's the sort of defeatist mentality of Capricorn, where there's sort of an assumed sense of life, even if it's not consciously articulated in this way. Life is weighing me down. I'm pressured. I'm oppressed by conditions. I can't budge. I can't move. I have to do things right. If I do it wrong, I'm going to be punished. That sense of pressure. I mean, and it's really important to be able to identify however that might be manifesting, because I think the undertone of it is a sense of feeling entrapped. The biggest issue with Capricorn is where we allow ourselves to feel stuck and trapped by time-space experience. The deeper healing and the deeper teaching and wisdom of Capricorn is using our time-space experience with respect to who we truly are and who we're wanting to become. It's bringing our commitment to our spiritual growth, to our agency, to awakening, to whatever is of value and meaning in this life. It's putting that before structure. It's kind of like saying structure comes before God, or God comes before structure. One will serve the other depending on where our attention is. And so it's very subtle. It's very easy to allow ourselves to become very identified and burdened by the time, space, social pressures that might be existing for us right now. I mean, that could be, especially, we have a lot of Earth stuff going on. So especially with this approaching Jupiter-Uranus conjunction and Uranus stationing direct, even though it's inherently expansive and just like incredibly revelatory, and we'll speak more about that in future talks, with it can definitely come a heightened sense of resources aren't flowing, right? That sense of I don't seem to have the resourcefulness and the connection to energy flowing. It's because something new is emerging. But you combine that with this Mars and Capricorn, even though it's a trine, that can still be a significant amount of stressful energy. And the challenge right now, and this is the key here, because remember, we're moving from Capricorn into Aquarius with this Mars. So the challenge is to not try to push forward to make the same thing work. Like trying to fit into the paradigm that itself is stressful and hard and oppressive. There is a calling in the self-leadership for a great amount of introspection and reflection. And the question is essentially, in order for things to work, to have what I need, to get the things done, to do what I'm here to do, I have to first fundamentally ground myself in my own internal sense of ethic. And I'll say that differently. To move forward and accomplish anything in life, the foundation, the starting point is, who do I want to be? What do I deeply, fundamentally value? What is my internal sense of ethic or morality? What is my guiding principle? Because the world can be your boss, your relationships, the time pressures, or what society says, or the products we're told to get, or the solutions we're told to have for the problems. The world has their very fixed ideas, and we fail in general to adequately recognize that a lot of, at any particular moment in time, a lot of what we believe is the way is just our conditioning, but it's the way and it's what's accepted. And I can't express the extent to which this is true for all of us, unassumed, unthoughted, right? Without reflection. We all live a certain way because that's just the way that we live. And it's not about right or wrong. It's just that's the way that we live. That's society. It's how it's structured. We buy products that are going to be wasteful. We buy things that are going to cause more environmental pain. we have these phones that have all kinds of consequences to the, it's just how we live. And it's not about not doing that, right? There are some people that try to be pure in immorality, but on a very highly principled, right? And then it really brings up that question, am I still able to function and integrate in the world? And I think there's some sort of wisdom that we all find around how to work within the system and accept, okay, there's something around the world as it is right now. I'm living within the system. As much as I believe it's silly to have these rules around body nudity and how it's sexualized, I still can't walk around naked. And so there's some sense of accepting and adopting and adjusting to the world that we live in. But when that becomes overly definitive of our consciousness, when we become overly identified with, I have to do it this way, I have to fit into the precedent of everything that I've known, then we really run the danger of an incredible amount of stress and anxiety. Because then we're basically projecting on the outside an internalized judgment that says, I'm wrong, I'm bad if I can't fit into this paradigm, into this parameter. But I'm going to be thinking of it as the outside, right? I'll be a failure according to this person or these measures or these projections of authority on the outside. It's so important that we're able to make that distinction between what are the boundaries and limitations that are in fact necessary to work with right now as a part of living here in this society and culture that I'm willing to embrace as a necessary part of this path, versus where do I need to, in a sense, break away from the conditioning. And you know what? Something not often understood about Capricorn has a lot to do with deconditioning. Not in an Aquarius kind of way. The deconditioning within Capricorn is sort of the unraveling of the assumed posture that we've developed over a long period of time. The way that it's supposed to be, right? Aquarius deconditions and it doesn't replace it with something. Like literally Aquarius is like freedom from the known. So when we decondition in Aquarius, which we'll get to that big time during this talk, we're just letting go of what we've known. And there's nothing else there. There's no other ground to like hold on to there, which is its own trip. But with Capricorn, we are deconditioning from the known, and then we're reconditioning something new, right? There's always a posture. You can't decondition bad posture and then not create a new one. There's always a cultivation and a practice in Capricorn to be cultivating whatever we've determined and recognized to be healthy and aligned. So alignment's like the key word here. And so cultivating alignment always comes back down to, and this is the point that I want to make here to bring all this Mars and Capricorn together. In the end of the day, I need to listen to my own inner authority, follow my own inner compass. And I think these transits can really bring up the sense of, well, do other people approve of me? Is it acceptable? Does it fit the precedent? What if I fail? What if I don't make it? And that tension around the possibility of failure can be really strong right now. Because this isn't saying do the thing that you know works, that you've done many, many times before. It does say, in order to grow, you need to be willing to try something new and grow into a new form. And I would say to grow into a new and expanded form. And if we're not, that's where the stress and the pressure comes in. Every stressful and dysfunctional paradigm in our life at every size scale is always stressful until it's replaced by a larger, more inclusive perspective. But until then, our minds are trapped in the way that we've known, and we can't see a different way. It's like a diet, right? We eat a certain diet. We don't know the effects that the food has on us. So we're lethargic, we're depressed, we have things, then we realize, oh, sugar does this to me, or, too much of this thing will do this to me. And then we try not doing that. Once we become self-aware. And so examples of this would be, are we taking the time right? Are we affirming Mars, making the choices and affirming the necessary boundaries and structures in our life to give ourselves the time and the space to nurture, to do our practice, to work out, to meditate, to be in that space of replenishment? Or are we in constant do? We wake up and we just move. We are just responding to what we think is needed or asked or required of us. There's a calling for leadership, and that leadership is very often about how am I creating boundaries with that Libra Aries axis. That's a big part of this. Other people may not know or understand or expect or be able to predict what we and only we can know for ourselves, what only we can identify as a need. And so that's sort of healing this sort of stressful archetype of I just got to work and keep on going. We have to remember, and this is the prayer that I offer, we are the ones in control of our life. Well, we're not in control from one point of view. There's a lot of surrender here, but we're in control of our thoughts. We are in control of our own vibration. We're not subject and victimized to the energy of fear and distress and anxiety. And while it happens for me and you and all of us, the teaching that I offer here and the prayer that we offer to remind ourselves is that we remember the immense agency and freedom and power that we actually have to not become victim to these conditioned patterns of stress. Because where we're going is so much greater than where we've been and what we've known, and thus we should not allow ourselves to get stuck in anxiety. That's why we need to create these boundaries, because Mars needs an outlet. It needs an outlet. Like there's no way to just be like, okay, I'm gonna just hunker down and do it, and like that repressed energy needs to go somewhere. If it's gonna go in music, if it's gonna go in working out, in running, if it's gonna go in your art form, if it's gonna go in creating the space to do the thing that moves that energy. Relationally, if we have the opportunity to just move the energy in a way where it's not taken personally. That's a big thing with that Aries Libra axis. With all that stress, Mars can get into a very sort of judgmental, stressed out, pressured place, which is very hard to deal with relationally. Right? It's like trying to have a mature conversation when there's a sort of unintegrated, suppressed adolescent energy that's trying to get out of there. So there's often a lot of value within relationship. This is something Michelle and I have been exploring a lot, in creating containers that are literally not about dialogue or conversation, but just to have the space for energy to move. And so whatever's spoken doesn't have to be true, doesn't have to make sense, doesn't have to be nice, but it's all allowed because it's just about letting it move. And we make a distinction between that and a conversation. We make a distinction between that and exploring something that needs to be addressed or having a conversation about a particular area. That requires kindness, listening, relationship. That requires maturity, right? But there's a gift that we can give each other. I mean, there's so much power in two people coming together. When the anchor is in love and kindness and helping each other, we have so much potential to be in service to one another. If we get our own, if we just get ourselves out of the way and say, how can I just be there for you, right? How can we embrace relationship in a way that's really helpful? It's just a matter of making the right choices and saying, okay, let's try this right now. I'm just going to be there for you and be pleased with you. And for these 10, 15, 20 minutes, set a timer. Rage, cry, scream, whatever you need to do. And if that space is there, if you're able to do that, it's a beautiful thing to explore. Because otherwise, I think the pressure with this Libra energy and Mars and Capricorn can be that growing. It's like the archetype of to make it very gendered. The father comes home, worked really hard, puts his hat on the expects a dinner. The mother's been at home all day with the kids, stressed out. It's, these like polarized archetypes that we all have inside of us, the lonely, uncared for feminine, the overstressed, sacrificial masculine, they're all inside of us. And they will always sort of like reflect each other in these relationships that we have. And there's something about getting free of that and being able to find who we are beyond those stuck patterns and roles. So when does this happen, right? The first 2 weeks of February are the unraveling of that. In the midst of that, Mercury actually leaves Capricorn and joins Aquarius and joins Pluto. So I think over the first week or so, there's a lot of really helpful and clarifying conversation, right? Kind of getting to the core. What are the pieces that we're actually looking at? What are the core essential dynamics? Being able to really see that. It's almost like bringing the mind to the bottom line and getting all of the noise and the tit for tat or the dualities and the choices. And can I do this? Can I do that? When we're stuck in too many choices and dualities relative to Mercury and Capricorn, we're often just trying to fit into the person we think we're supposed to be. There's a lot of value in being able to kind of just get deeper and ground and get quiet and see what is it that I actually am and how can I bring forth my authority as that. So this movement towards Pluto with Mercury is helping us to just drop in. But the invitation within that is to not entertain the frenetic, stressful thinking. So about 2 weeks into it, when Mars enters Aquarius, we're in a completely new phase. So let's talk about the other dimension of deconditioning. And we can really appreciate the flow, the context from Capricorn to Aquarius in this way. The deconditioning of Aquarius is, okay, you have, right? How does this shirt fit, right? I can adjust it. I can make new adjustments, right? And okay, deconditioning of Aquarius is letting go of the idea of shirt in the first place, like letting go of the whole paradigm and looking at it anew as if for the first time. You have your relationships, you have your jobs, you have your work, you have the crystallized roles that we all play in life, the food we eat. And we always have this like projection of what we think. Like we have these images of the future when we think we're thinking about it, but they're just images. All of that is almost like this unconscious trance, this framework that we're living in, that we're just sort of moving through. Aquarius rises up a little bit and says, look, oh, look at that. I thought that was me. You're just looking at all these projections of thought. And what happens, because we are living in time and space, as long as we're in this incarnation, there is always going to be a crystallization, right? Every experience in life is going to manifest in form. Right? There can be these purely Aquarian moments, rare, it happens, where we're just sort of in this purely non-dual place. And that can be like a bubble for a little bit of time where you don't eat, you don't sleep. You're kind of like seeing everything as an archetype. It's all impersonal. That happens for some people. And it's usually followed by a sort of catapult to the other extreme where we realize, oh man, I didn't pay my bills. Like the Saturn Capricorn dimension just really kicks in afterwards. So as long as we're here, there's actually the necessity for an integrated relationship between the Capricorn, Aquarius, Saturn, Uranian energies, because we're always going to have to integrate that next level of awakening in this paradigm that we're living. We have to bring it out in form in some way. Jason Holly and myself gave a great talk recently on the Saturn-Uranus phasal relationship as a part of the Jeffrey Wolf Green Evolutionary Astrology Planetary Pair series. Definitely check it out. I recommend the whole series. But I'll put that in the link below if you want to learn more about that. Because that Capricorn-Saturn energy in the relationship is very active right now. So with that understanding that we do need to reintegrate in form, we can appreciate that what happened with this Aquarian liberation, it then sort of refreshes the whole template. And it brings forth the question, oh, I can do this completely differently. I can start and move forward from a completely different premise. The way to move through that is by identifying fundamentally what are the essential attachments that I'm holding on to, because Pluto is going to bring us into awareness of what are the things that we're holding on to. What is it I've been bound by? Bound by desire, we see only the manifestations. It's a quote from the Tao Te Ching, right? We're only going to see the things of our life, and we're going to be trying to navigate ourselves and arranging ourselves within those things. But free of desire, freed up from the craving, from the attachment, we can see the source. There's an opportunity during this time. If I were to make a short from this little talk, this would be the 1 minute short. There's an but I'll probably, now that I said that, there's an opportunity during this time to refresh, to set the stage, to refresh our mind and our thinking, and allowing our life experience to bring us into awareness of what are the attachments that we have to the thing we're trying to make work, to the person we're trying to be, according to the paradigm that isn't helpful or useful or alive anymore. When we let go of that fixation, when we're willing to release that, there might be some fear, anxiety, and uncertainty, but there's a whole new vantage point that's available on the other side of that. But we can only access that vantage point if we're willing to let go of the attachments to the old way. And it's important to recognize that Aquarius is always going to bring forth this threshold, especially Pluto and Aquarius. I mean, this is like the theme. Pluto entered Aquarius, but Mars is like initiating it, right? This is Pluto and Aquarius is always going to be bringing forth this threshold when there are strong transits, when it's transiting a planet in your own chart, right? Where that which we're evolving into can't really be understood according to where we've been and what we've known. Of course, because we can't bring the past into the future. We can only project an idea of it. So when we liberate our mind from our attachments and our fixations, what we're bringing back is the capacity to live in the present moment free of ideas. Why does Aquarius, something to understand, why does Aquarius correspond to inventions and technology? Aquarius is one of those archetypes that I find a lot of students get confused about, because it's both about liberation, freedom from the known, also inventions, technologies, and friends and communities, and aliens, what's the connection? My perspective is that all technology, all invention, so to speak, are not actually new. What we're always doing, and this is sort of a Marshall McLuhan idea, the form is always replaced by a newer expression that is sort of the next dimension of that form, like the computer replaced the typewriter. But what we're doing is we're ever approaching the essential intelligence of creation itself. The typewriter, the computer, the internet, that's all sort of approaching the inherent internal technology of communication, right? That all minds are connected, that there's an internal internet that connects all minds, that there's an intelligence to creation, and that intelligence of creation itself is the highest technology, right? There's only one technology, and that's the technology of creative design. All the inventions are approaching a greater apprehension of that one design. And so when we innovate, we're just getting closer and apprehending more of the intelligence of life itself. There aren't different intelligences. There's just the intelligent design of creation. That's where astrology and all these different expressions say these transits are moving, and we can track them on every cycle, every dimension of life. There's an algorithm to all of manifest creation. So we start to learn more about that intelligence, and we apply it. We have a new idea, we have a realization, and we bring it into application. We realize, all these things are possible, right? Someone had to think of something to come up with these touchscreens, to even think that that's possible. And it's just being able to apprehend more of what actually already is. And the reason why it's connected to groups of people is because we're always going to find ourselves resonating coming into vibrational resonance with other people that share a similar level of intelligence, that are vibrating at a similar level of intelligence. So when we realize a new possibility, when we've opened up our mind to a greater connection to the cosmos, like we're literally, when we come up with a new insight or we liberate and we have a new experience, we're vibrating with the cosmos a little more clearly. That's where new ideas and innovations come from. We're connecting with that universal intelligence. And so we're naturally going to resonate with other people that, oh, I get it. You get it. I get it. Right. But that's not going to be like, we've got it all. It's going to be whatever dimensions I might be resonating with in whatever categories or areas of life. I'm going to find other people that will, connect. And that accelerates the process, right? Community naturally immediately becomes a Capricorn Saturn thing. Now we have a group that's formed on these shared ideas, right? It becomes a sort of agreement. And that becomes its own momentum that allows the crystallization of these higher vibrational possibilities into the status quo of our human life. And of course, within that, we're always going to have that issue of within any particular group or circle, that Aquarian impulse is always going to be separating from that. It's always going to be stepping away from the status quo to open up even more. There's always that tension in the Aquarius experience between the freedom of the unknown and kind of breaking out of, liberating from the structure, but also the stress or the anxiety of not wanting to be separate. And that can often be a struggle as we deal with really strong Aquarius energies. If I'm truly myself, if I'm true to myself and I don't just try to conform, then I won't belong. I'm going to be the outsider. And there's always that edge. So Mars joining Pluto, just after Mercury joining Pluto, is really getting our energy focused. I think if there's a lot of stress and buildup during this Capricorn phase, we can appreciate that as it gets closer to Pluto, there's going to be a releasing of energy. And I often find that Mars will have, when there's a Mars transit, I've often noticed, and I've noticed this for other people as well, that the release often happens a few days before the exact transit, 2 or 3 days before. Share, I wonder if the chat is disabled or not, but share in your comments. I wonder if you also experience it. Certain planets, it's like the day of. For Mars, it's almost always like 2 or 3 days before. For years, I've been noticing that. There can be an immense release of energy and tension and pressure. So it brings us back to that teaching with the understanding that there's a liberation and a healing that's unfolding right now. We can appreciate where there is some stress and anxiety to honor, okay, I don't know where I'm going with this. There's something deeper. There's something beyond what I can understand on the other end. So I'm not going to let the anxiety get the better of me. And as Mars gets closer, it's really this beautiful invitation to be willing to break out of your own status quo. Mars in Aquarius with Pluto. It's like the metaphor for that is a freedom fighter jumping out of an airplane. In our own life, it's this expression of the willingness to plunge Mars, to give ourselves to our individual destiny, to the calling of our individual soul path, where we're guided and meant to go. See, Aquarius is kind of like what happens to each one of us when we're not holding on to our own conditioning. There's a natural unraveling and unfolding that is an expression of our inherent soul individuality that resonates and aligns with the intelligence of creation that happens on its own. And all the people and the relationships and circumstances and forms of our life, they come into their own place when we're not trying to make it where we think it needs to go. After this will maybe be the last core point that I'll share. I wonder if I disabled chat, because I'm noticing, let me know if your chat, say something in the comment. I want to know if chat is disabled or not, just so I can know. Venus and Mars come together. And it's just fascinating to me that this is all happening together. This is during the last week, February 21st. Well, if you're making comments, I can't see it, so maybe I accidentally disabled it. So let me say two things about this. The relationship between Pluto and Mars, which I've spoken a lot about, it's a very essential relationship, right? That relationship is about the choices we're making, how we're responding to experience with respect to our deeper evolutionary purpose, Mars relative to Pluto, right? So that Mars Pluto brings up that stress. I'm wanting to evolve. I need to evolve. I need to have more agency and know my power to make choices right now. So I free myself from entanglements, from confusion, from attachment, from addiction, and I claim my power. What am I letting go of? What am I saying yes to? There's a deeply willful, non-victimized agency that we learn with Mars Pluto. You go from there into Mars Venus. This really brings up the whole dimension of how am I bringing that leadership and that agency into my relationship? So Mars and Venus rule Aries and Libra, which are the nodal axis. So that's very much the evolutionary theme. Wherever the nodes are where the core evolutionary growth is. And so the rulers of the nodes, this says these are the dynamics coming forward to be resolved and integrated so you can continue to evolve. Like it's a very essential focal point at any moment in time. Venus is now catching up to Mars, moving past Mars. So we can say our relationships, our agreements. Venus is not just, relational conversations, how we're in relationships with others and finding balance and harmony. It's our inner ear, our inner lover, our inner beloved, how we're listening to ourselves, our own feelings, our own needs, and bridging and extending that with communication with other people. It's a constant journey, right? You want this. Let me see how I feel. Am I available for that? Does that work? Does that balance and fit into my life? Can I give that and be balanced and thus receiving through that giving naturally? Or that take me out of balance, and what adjustments can I make to be able to get? That's a constant journey with Libra, right? It's a navigation of that dance of balance, but it's an inner listening, not getting stuck in any strong polarity. Without that inner listening, we have issues of compromise or expectation, where I'm supposed to give or you're supposed to give. And that's in particular emphasized with the Capricorn archetype in general, right? Like this is how it's supposed to be, or this is how I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to give as a partner or as a client or as a practitioner. Like there are certain roles and expectations. And that's true if we're agreeing on that. But if I'm agreeing with you, hey, you play this role, I play that role, then yes, those are the expectations. But are we making this agreement? And that's the question here. Venus joining Mars says, hey, this is what we're doing, right? But do we feel free, Mars? Is this livable? What are we wanting? What do we desire? And Mars in Aquarius says, when you're letting go of all the lower energy vibrations and attachments, when you let go, Mars in Aquarius really does invite us actually to raise our energy, to let go of the lower vibrational attachments, the cravings and the aversions, because those are just sort of lower vibrational expressions of a greater energetic possibility. Like energy can be used more wisely when we're not bound by that. And we can see the field more clearly, more objectively when we're not bound by that. So it's like from a deeper liberated soul place, where do I want to go? Where am I, Mars and where does my soul path want to go? Right? When I'm just looking at it. Where's its natural unfolding? And so it really does bring forth, after all this strong Pluto work, an immense amount of engagement and connection and looking at. The ground of friendship is so essential here. This is not just interpersonal relationship. It's fundamentally me and you and everyone in all of our relations. We are all friends. We are all family on a deeper soul humanity level. It says we're all here together, sharing in this journey, sharing in this awakening. I've quoted that Ram Dass quote many times. We're walking each other home. That's so important because it allows us to sort of free and loosen our grip from the world we thought we were living in. of the roles and the structures and the forms that we're so familiar with. And it allows us to come back into that place of mutuality. What's most helpful? How can I really be here in a way that's truly helpful, but grounded while being grounded in my full self? That's what wants to happen here. More thriving, more connection, more availability, more helpful sharing, and a greater sense of freedom. And I can't emphasize enough with these signatures how much it invites of us to be willing to let go of what we've known, to let go of precedent, to let go of fear. And I think the only way to let go of fear is to experience the fear. Like, you can't let go of something you're not holding on to. If we're repressing that we're holding on to it, that's going to be the stress. There's always that tender, wise, sort of incomprehensible meeting of what's here. The fear, the anxiety, the worry, the stress, the judgment. Just being able to acknowledge, this is here. Once we meet it, we actually connect with it, connect with the vibration of it. Only then are we actually able to become an observer of it. We become an observer of that which we've been holding on to the moment we actually allow ourselves to notice that it's here. It's just beautiful, like subtle infliction of awareness. And that's why I think relationship is so helpful, where we have the opportunity to express ourselves. And that expression allows us to just sort of see it all, right? We get to feel lighter about our life when we just see everything as it is. That expression loosens us from the grip of the tension that we don't know what to do about it. So let's take a moment and I'll tune to see if there's any other final pieces to share. All of this is happening in context with this Mars, with this Chiron Aries. Obviously, with so much strong Mars energy, to briefly address this, what that says relative to all this Mars energy, right? North Node, Chiron, North Node being the leading edge of our evolution, Mars super activated in Aquarius. This is a time of leadership, of choices and individuation, making new choices. And perhaps there's a lot of fear and vulnerability in the unknown, in the new. And this does call for a greater level of self-trust. And I think if we're not embracing that, we won't find out the greater medicine and potential that we have. Every new journey that we've ever walked is something we've never done before. The first time you've had a sleepover when you're a child, that's scary, that's new. There's that quality of, am I going to be safe? Am I going to be okay? We are called upon at this time to be building our strength, building our self-leadership and our clarity and our self-trust. Because we're definitely going, and our lives together are moving in a direction that we haven't yet seen. So we'll close this talk with that note. And I want to remind everyone that I am going to be offering a free intro class. You can register on my website. I'll put a link in the description below to dive very deeply into the healing potential of this Chiron North Node conjunction happening on the 19th. This class will be on Sunday, the 18th of February. I also have my training program, so check that out in the description below. You can get all of the content now and our live classes that I'm offering at several tiers of classes for students at different levels of the curriculum. So I'll have a class for those who are totally new, a class for those that are more practiced and more familiar with these teachings. Check it out. During the Chiron North Node talk, I'm going to devote some time at the end to just really introduce my training program and let people know more about it for those that are feeling interested in it, and also be able to answer some questions. But definitely get in touch if you're drawn, if you're interested in that. So I couldn't see any comments, so please share your comments in if you're able to. Share how this lands for you, some of your own experiences. I would love to hear your experiences with Mars transits too. If you've also, for those who are tracking, if you've also noticed that they tend to happen a little bit before. And how is all this Aries Mars energy for you? This Capricorn Aquarius transition, right? The stress, the pressure, how are you working with it? I just feel like there's a lot of wisdom here for us all to glean and just noticing what's going on for ourselves. And we'd love to hear more about it from you. So thank you so much for joining me, and much love to you all. Bye.